Pure family, so glad that you could join us online today. If you're watching on Facebook, go ahead, click a like, share the video with a friend, tag them in the comments, or share it to your own Facebook page. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And so we're so glad you're joining us all online. And if you're new to our online community, maybe this is your first time logging in, or you just joined us this Easter, welcome, welcome. So glad you are hanging out with us in our online church. Also, if you've recently accepted Christ, we would love to connect with you. We'd love to walk with you. Such an important step in your life. And so to go to pureheart.org/online connect, if you're new or accepted Christ, fill out a connect form. Also on that page, pureheart.org/online connect, are links to resources and connection opportunities that we have for our online church community. So now let's take this time together to refocus, encourage our hearts, cast out fear and lies from our minds. All of us, let's lean in, grab our Bibles, open our Bible apps, and take time for our hearts to be encouraged. Man, we need it, because this year, let's worship together and get healthier together, become more like Jesus for the sake of others. Welcome to Online Church.
Hello, church family. Would you join us as we worship our King? Saturday was silent, surely it was through. Since when has impossible ever stopped you? Friday's disappointment is Sunday's empty tomb. Since when has impossible ever stopped you? This is the sound of dry bones rattling. This is the praise make a dead man walk again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. This is the sound of dry bones rattling. Pentecostal fire, stirring something new. You're not gonna run out of miracles anytime soon. Here we go. Resurrection power runs in my veins to you. I believe there's another miracle here in this room. This is the sound of dry bones rattling. Praise make a dead man walk again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. together. And the weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. And when the darkness falls, it won't prevail. We sing about our King. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. And my God will never fail. That's right. And my God will never fail. Come on. And I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. We declare this truth. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Every battle, yes, belongs to you. Come on, there's power in the name of Jesus, resurrection power. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. Come on. And every war he wages, he will. I'm not backing down from any giant. And I know how this story ends. Come on, we declare it. I know. Yes, I know how this story ends. And I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you. Come on, can we declare that together? And I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. Yes, we are. Come on now. Whatever battle it is, I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. There's battle in the name of Jesus. Yes, I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Every battle, it belongs to you. It belongs to you. Come on, he's turning things around for our good. Let's sing this together. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. We declare this truth. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. He's turning things around. Say it. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good, for our good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. Come on, church, we keep declaring this truth together. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. He's turning things around. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. And I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. Come on now. The battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. Yes, we are. Come on, every battle belongs to him. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see victory. And I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you. He's turning things will live for the moments where I'm still in your presence. All the noise dies down. Lord, speak to me now. You have all my attention. I will linger and listen. I can't miss a thing. Lord, I know my heart wants more of you. My heart wants something new, so I surrender all. All I want is to live within your love, being done by who you are. My desire is to know you deeper. Lord, I will open up again, throw my fears into the wind. I am desperate for a touch of heaven. Oh, 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 oh. You're the fire in the morning, you're the cool in the evening, the breath in my soul, all the life in my bones. There is no hesitation in your love and affection. It's the sweetest of all. Lord, I know my heart wants some more of you. My heart wants something new, so I surrender all. All I want is to live within your love, being done by who you are. My desire is to know you deeper. Lord, I will open up again, throw my fears into the wind. I'm desperate for a touch of heaven. Oh, oh, open up my heart to you. Come on, open up your heart. Open up my heart to you now. So do what only you can do. Jesus, have your way in me now. Come on, say it again. Open up my heart to you. Open up my heart to you now. Do what only you can do. Jesus, have your way in me now. Open up my heart. na 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 and all I want is to live within your love, be undone by who you are. My desire is to know you deeper, Lord. I will open up again, throw my fears into the wind. I'm desperate for a touch of heaven.
A touch of heaven. Give us faith, give us faith.
Let faith rise up, oh heart, believe. Let faith rise up in me. Let faith rise up, oh heart, believe. Let faith rise up in me.
Come on, let's keep declaring that together. Let faith
Let faith rise up, oh heart, believe. Let faith rise up in me. Let faith rise up, oh heart, believe. Let faith rise up in me. Peace be still, say the word, and I will set my feet upon the sea, till I'm dancing in the deep love. Peace be still, you are here, so it is well. Even when my eyes can't see, I will trust the voice that speaks. Peace over me. Oh, peace over me. Rise up, oh heart, believe. Let faith rise up in me. Let faith rise up, oh heart, believe. Let faith rise up in me.
Pure Heart Online Community, we have some exciting next steps for your spiritual growth that we would love for you to check out. First, we have our Habit Labs video podcast. These podcasts are designed to help you develop the habits and rhythms in your life to become more like Jesus for the sake of others. We have already released the first 2 episodes, one titled So You're Unhealthy and the other Let's Reflect. And we've heard such great feedback from them so far. Our 3rd episode will drop on Monday, April 26th, so just go to pureheart.org/habitlabs to watch or listen to this new series. Also, we've found that over the last year, the community is such a vital part of our lives, so we are launching Heart Cruise the first week of May. These crews, which used to be called life groups, are bi-weekly sermon-based groups. Crews are a great way for you to grow in your relationship with God and with each other. You will be able to sign up for a crew the last 2 weeks of April at pureheart.org/heartcruise. These will happen at locations all over Phoenix, and we also have online crews for those of you who can't meet physically. We're so excited to see what God is going to do in our lives as we grow together in community this year, and remember that the church is not a building.
Thank you for joining us online today. We have the absolute privilege of speaking into your life, encouraging you today. We know there's so many things flying at you in this world, so many things bringing you down. We just want to lift you up and encourage you today and let you know that you matter to God. You were created on purpose. There's nobody else on planet Earth just like you. You were born for a mission. Thank you for being with us today. Over 150 countries are now tuning in online. All 50 states, every weekend, people are joining us, growing online. Not just on the weekends, tuning in all throughout the week. Thank you for making the choice to grow with us. We are humbled by that. We know you have so many choices, so many great leaders to listen to, so many churches you could tune in with. Thank you for growing with us. Have a strong day. I want to welcome everybody from around the world, around our country, and around the state of Arizona. Thank you for tuning in with us today for this message, Getting Our Relationships Together. And so last week we were in our brand new studio. So here we are, week 2 in our brand new studio. And I just want to say this real quick for those of you who were watching last week. Did you notice how much I was sweating? And then the guys told me afterwards, they're like, oh, we didn't have the AC on in the new studio. I'm like, are those new lights in there that hot? Because I literally had sweat drips coming down the side of my face. So great in here today, nice and cool. It's awesome. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, team, for all that you do to keep me cool up here. So here we are, week 2 in our brand new studio. Thank you for tuning in. A quick shout out to Crossroads Recovery. Guys, we love you. Thank you so much for being a part of this service today as well. So as I started off last week, saying that I've been in ministry now for about 27 years. I started when I was 11, just kidding. For 27 years. And in the last 27 years, one of the greatest struggles that I have seen that people are going through is all tied around relationships. And so we know this, especially after the last 12 months that we've had in our world today, that the quality of our lives depends on the quality of our relationships. And in this series, we're not focusing on dealing with the issues that we have with people. Let's just be real. We have issues with people, all right? If you're around people long enough, you're going to have issues. It's personalities colliding. We're not focusing on that. We're going to focus on what we can do, not what they do. We're going to focus on what we can do, not what they do. And I showed you this illustration last week, these 2 circles. The larger circle is all of our friends and family members, our spouses, our kids. We spend most of our time trying to control and fix everybody in that circle, when the only person we can control, the only person that we can take full responsibility for is the little circle in the middle, and that's me. So we're going to focus on what we can do, not what other people are doing. And we had said there's 2 foundational perspectives for this series. The first one is this. This is really important. Be the friend you want to have. Yeah, that's right. Stop trying to make everybody else be who you want them to be. You be the friend that you want to have. And secondly, this is so good, be that friend to yourself. Because we can oftentimes be our own worst enemy. We're looking at 3 filters when we look at our relationships in this series. The first one is this. We talked about this last week. A safe place to be. This week we're going to talk about a safe place to heal. And then next week we're going to talk about a safe place to grow. And each week I'm going to be giving you a practice, something that we can live out together to make our relationships stronger. Last week, in a safe place to be who God's really made you to be, our practice was appreciation. And I'm hoping that you spend a lot of time appreciating the people around your world. And our action step was we were going to spend time with God, thanking God for the people that He has placed in our life, and then appreciating how God's made them. And then we were going to go and tell people in our life how much we appreciate them. My wife, Nicole, has been meal prepping for our entire family. She is a saint. And so I'm on diet number 4,328 now in my life. But my wife's helping me so much, and it's making all the difference. I feel so much more energy. It's so good. But she's been packing me my lunch for work every week because she is wonderful, and I'm so grateful for that. But what she did this week for myself, my daughter, my son, is she wrote each one of us a note. On a note card, my son at Grand Canyon University, she didn't do one for him, but the ones who are living at home, my son Josh, my daughter Abigail, and myself, she wrote note cards and put them with all of our meals. And on that note card, she wrote what she appreciated about us. It was so good. I mean, I would love to share it with you, but it's very private. It's got some sweet nothings in it, and I can't go there with you. All right, so last week was appreciation, which when we're appreciating the people around us, we're creating an environment, a culture, where it's a safe place to be. This week we're talking about, and this one's not going to be easy. I'm just going to give you a heads up. This one's going to be difficult. Vulnerability. Vulnerability. Just say it with me. Come on. Vulnerability. To be real and to be honest. And let me just say right now, this cannot happen. It's why I told you last week. We can't move on to the next two practices until we get appreciation right. Because this can't happen without an atmosphere of appreciation in all of our relationships. That's why last week mattered so much. See, appreciation, I'll say it again, creates an environment around your relationships where people know that they matter, and they know that they are loved, and they feel safe to be real. When I know you care about me, when I know you appreciate me, my heart starts to open up towards you, and now I can be real with you. I can talk about the deeper things of my life. And all great relationships not only need appreciation, they need vulnerability. You have to be able to be real with each other. The definition of vulnerability is simply this: uncertainty, I know this is going to sound so fun, uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Doesn't that sound like something that everybody would want to do? No. Vulnerability is hard. It is not easy, but we have to have it. To me, vulnerability is all about being real. And everybody says, I hear this from men and women alike, man, I just want real relationships. I want my relationships to be real. I don't want fake relationships. Here's the problem. We want real relationships. We just don't always want to be real. We don't want to get honest with each other. We don't want to open up and really share, because here's the thing. We don't want to look weak, and especially for those of us as men. We think of vulnerability, we think of weakness. I don't want to be weak. I don't want to share my problem. I don't want to share my issues. I don't want to throw up all everybody in my life. No, vulnerability is strength. Being able to be real takes courage. One of my favorite writers, Brene Brown, she's a phenomenal author, and she's written incredible books. One of my favorite quotes from her is this: vulnerability is not weakness. It's the most accurate, check it out, measure of courage. That's right. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the most accurate, I love that Brene Brown says this, measure of courage. You want to know how brave somebody is? You know how tough you are, guys? How strong you are? How willing are you to be vulnerable about those things way down deep inside that you don't want to talk about, but you're not going to like this. Everybody already sees it. Our soul already leaks. It comes out in our words. So you being honest about it is finally owning the stuff, owning the stuff in your relationships and being real with the people around you who really care about you and really love you. Singles, I'll just say this to you. Singles, in your friendships, if there's no real friendship without vulnerability. Your friendship is only as strong as your level of vulnerability. So if you're not able to be real with people, you don't really have a relationship. You're not really that close because you haven't trusted your soul to one another yet. Your heart, what's really going on inside. I'll say to those of you who are dating or who engaged to get married, there's no future foundation for your marriage without vulnerability. There's really no future for your relationship if you're not willing to be real with each other and talk about the stuff way down deep inside that you really are dealing with. If you're not honest about that, that's the foundation. That honesty, that vulnerability is the foundation for the future of your relationship. And I'll say for the future of your marriage. Now, this is going to get a little dicey for a second. Let me talk to the married folks that are listening today. There's no real intimacy without vulnerability. That's right. There's no real intimacy without vulnerability. And boy, this is going to be interesting to say. All right, so hopefully there's no small kids around. Listen, if you want a great sex life in marriage, I'm talking to married couples. If you want a great sex life in marriage, you have to have vulnerability. Your level of fulfillment sexually is really tied to your willingness to be vulnerable with one another and real with one another. If you can't trust your spouse with your soul, you'll never fully trust them with your body. Just let that sit there for a second. If you can't trust your spouse with your soul, with what's really going on inside of you, you'll never be able to fully trust them with your body. And if you can't fully trust them with your body, there'll always be inhibition. And inhibition doesn't work real well in the bedroom. It just doesn't. This issue of vulnerability is foundational. Whether it's in your friendships, your dating relationships, and even in your marriages, it matters greatly. And I'm going to just say this, real relationships don't just happen. They don't just happen. They don't, like, oh man, we get each other, we know each other, we hang out, we talk about the same things. No. Every great relationship takes courage. The courage to be real. And that doesn't happen naturally. Great relationships are made. The reason why we as a church, Pure Heart Church, the reason why it's okay to not be okay at Pure Heart, why we've created an environment where it's okay to not be okay, because every single one of our leaders is willing to step up and say, I'm not perfect. I have issues. I'm not okay myself. I don't have all my ships together. Every single one of the leaders in our church is willing to be that real and that vulnerable. And because we lead the way in that, people feel comfortable in our church. People feel encouraged to really be honest about their lives. And when you're really honest about your life, that's where real healing begins. Now listen, we keep it real so that you can be real. And then we bring our real issues to a real God who has real answers. Now guys, you know this. Listen to me, men, for a second. Come on, lean in. You know this deep down inside. You wish you could find someone to be real with. I know maybe on the surface you don't want to nod your head yes, or you want to be honest about that. But you've got some stuff way down deep inside you know you need to talk about. There's days in your life, men, when you feel like you don't have what it takes. That you may not be strong enough. Where you feel like you're failing. And you wish you had a friend that you could be that honest with. You know how you find that friend? You be that friend. And you be that friend to yourself. You're honest with yourself. You own your own stuff in your relationships. We're going to talk more about that next week. But then you be that friend to somebody else. You lead out in vulnerability. You want to find a friend to be real with? Start being real with the current friends around your life. And you're going to find out real quick where your real relationships are at. And the guys who will lean in with you. Because there's some guys, they're going to back off and hey, ho, hey. I just want to talk about sports. I want to talk about cars. I want to talk about work. I didn't want to talk about how you were feeling in your marriage. I didn't want to talk about how you're feeling raising your kids. I didn't want to talk about some of the insecurities of your life. I didn't want to talk about really the brokenness from your past. You know why? Because they're afraid to talk about their own stuff. But you're going to find some friends who will lean in with you. And then you're going to discover great relationships. You're going to find a place where you can find healing. God's going to use that friend, guys and gals, to find healing in your life that you've been longing for. Man, I challenge you. Step out. Take the risk. Dads, here we go. You ready, dads? I'm just going to say it. Dads, you want your kids to be real with you? You want your kids to come to you and talk to you about things? You see stuff going on in your kids' life and you're wondering to yourself, man, why aren't they talking to me about that? I wish they would. I know stuff about that. Dads, let me ask you a question. Are you real with your kids? Are you willing to talk about some of them, your mistakes from your past? I'm not talking about massive details and throwing up all over them and telling them all your problems. I'm talking about sitting down and being honest with your kids about some of the things you've wrestled with. Look at the age that they're at. What can they handle? I've done this with my boys and my wonderful daughter over and over and over again. I am blessed to have kids who come and process life with me and my wife, Nicole. But do you know one of the reasons why? Grace of God, first of all. The other reason is this. Nicole and I are real with our kids. We're not afraid to talk about our failures. We're not afraid to talk about our mistakes. We're not afraid to talk about the things that are going on down deep inside of us. And because we have modeled that for them and we have trusted them with our stuff, they trust us with their stuff. That's how it works, mom and dad. That's how it works. Leaders at work, that's how it works. You want a team that's more connected, more unified? Managers, leaders, listen to me. Then you lead out in vulnerability. You be willing to say, you know what, sometimes I don't really think I know what I'm doing. And you be honest. You want your team to be honest about the mistakes they're making? Then when you make a mistake, you be honest about the mistake that you've made. And when you can lead out that vulnerably, other people over time, may not happen right away, will also be willing to be real with you as well. See, there's two extremes in dealing with our pain. There's two extremes in dealing with our stuff that's way down deep inside that we don't want to share. The first is to bury it, and the other is to bury others in it. All right? We can bury it, we can push it down, act like it doesn't exist, or we can bury other people. We can just keep throwing up on people, just keep sharing over too much. There's a fine line. But let me tell you the most dangerous. The most dangerous is to bury it. That's the most dangerous place to be because we are only as broken and as sick as our secrets. That's just the truth. The more you bury it, the more dangerous it is for your own soul. And we all live with the pressure to show the world that we have our ship together. We all face that, and it's slowly drowning us. Listen, I want to run through this for just a moment. The Bible is filled with vulnerable, real moments from its heroes. I love this about the Bible. It's one of the reasons why I believe it is absolutely the truth, because most writings from this time period in which the Bible was written, over that gap of time it was written, most writings from that time period presented their heroes in almost mythological light, in perfection. They didn't talk a lot about their flaws. They talked about their strengths. But in the Bible talks about the good, the bad, and the ugly, about all the characters. It really lays out the issues of their life. I want you to think through some of these things. For example, Moses had an anger problem, and he murdered a man. Hosea's wife was a prostitute. Noah got drunk and laid naked in his tent. Come on. If you're editing the Bible, you might want to leave that part out. But no, that's in there. Jonah was a racist. Jacob was a liar. Elijah burned out in his ministry. Jeremiah was depressed and suicidal. He's called the weeping prophet. Thomas doubted. John Mark flaked out on a missionary trip with the Apostle Paul. Peter abandoned Jesus in his greatest hour of need. And Timothy had ulcers. All of that is in the Bible. All of the heroes, all the stories, they talk about the real things of their lives. King David, he had an affair with Bathsheba. He had an affair with a married woman. And then he had that married woman, her husband, murdered. Once he found out that she was pregnant with his child, he went and then had her husband murdered and buried him. That's crazy. If we were editing the stories of the Bible, especially King David, the greatest king in Israel's history, you might want to leave that part out. But no, that's in there. And here's the part I love the most. Catch this for a second. David actually used his absolute power as king to make sure that his brokenness made history. That's right. David made sure that his failures, his weaknesses, his mistakes showed up in his story. He didn't edit them out. And he was the king. He had absolute power to do that. David did not do that. Matter of fact, he wrote songs about his failures, and then he had them sung in church. Think about that. Hopefully he got Bathsheba's permission, before he did that, but I probably doubted that he did. These are called Psalms. In the middle of your Bible, you'll find Psalms, the book of Psalms. Most of the Psalms are written by King David. And when you read through them, you're going to find these are some real songs. These are really gut level, what they're wrestling with God. I mean, David even has a moment in Psalm 13. He's like, Lord, look at me, listen to me, or I'm going to sleep in death. Why are you ignoring me? He's just honest before God. David poured his heart out and he made sure that his brokenness stayed in his story because it was part of his story. Talk about vulnerability. Matter of fact, let's take a moment and look at Psalms 51. Psalms 51 was written right after David is confronted by Nathan the prophet about his affair with Bathsheba. And listen, I'm just going to cover a little bit of this. Listen to some of the things that David writes. He says this in verse 1 of Psalm 51. He says, "Have mercy on me, O God, because of your unfailing love, because of your great compassion, blot out the stain of my sin." First of all, did you notice how much David understood God's love for him? He knew that he was loved by God. And so in the midst of his brokenness, he cries out and he throws himself on the love and the mercy of God. He says, blot out the stain of my sin, wash me clean from my guilt, purify me from my sin, for I recognize my rebellion. That's important. And we're going to talk more about that next week. I recognize that I have messed up. And then he says this, it haunts me day and night. David's like, what I've done to Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, what I've done with Bathsheba, my sin haunts me. It's down deep inside, and I don't know how to deal with it. So God, I'm bringing it to you. Now skip down to verse 5. He says, for I was born a sinner. Yes, from the moment my mother conceived me. But you desire, I love this, honesty, to be real, to be honest. That's what vulnerability is all about. But you desire honesty even from the womb. And then go down to verse 14. He says this, forgive me for shedding innocent blood. I love the fact that he included innocent blood. You know, forgive me for my sin is one thing. Forgive me for murder is another thing. Forgive me for shedding innocent blood. And that's a whole other level of vulnerability. Oh God who saves. I love that he says that. The word saves here has the idea of to heal, to make whole, and to restore. Oh God who restores me. Then I will joyfully sing of your forgiveness. Verse 15. This is so good. This actually helps me be real. It says this. Basically what David is saying is, help me be real. He says this, unseal my lips, O Lord, that my mouth may praise you. You see, sometimes in our shame, sometimes in our pain, we don't even know how to express it. We don't even know how to talk about it. And David's like, in my shame, in my pain, would you unleash my lips? Would you unseal help me to talk. Help me to be real. Help me to be vulnerable. And help me to praise you, God, in the midst of my sorrow and my grief and my shame. And then I love this, verse 17. You will not reject a broken and repentant heart, O God. The idea of repentance is to own your stuff and to turn and to go a different direction. You see, a heart that's willing to be real, that's what God wants in our relationship with Him. And it's what we also need in our relationship with others. Because that's where a safe place to heal is found. When we can be real, it's a safe place to heal. And so I ask you, are your relationships a safe place to be real? And this is a tough statement. Or is your honesty weaponized? Does your willingness to be real and honest, is it used against you? I'll just simply say, that's not a safe relationship. That's not a safe place to be. And if you're married and that's the way it's happening, I would encourage you to talk to somebody, talk to a counselor, and get help with that, because that is a recipe for disaster in a relationship. When you're actually honest and then it's used against you, that is not a good place to be. And you're going to need some help with that. You're going to need some help with that. So, let's take a moment and look at the Apostle Paul. Go with me to the New Testament. I love the fact that as Paul matures more and more in his relationship with Jesus, as he gets older, he actually becomes more real about his sin and his pain. It's fascinating to me. So I want to show you this real quick. You might want to just jot these down or take a picture of the screen, if you will, so that you can go back and look up these verses. But we'll start in Galatians chapter 2, verse 6. This was written in AD 49. Paul had been following Jesus for about 14 years when he wrote this letter to the church in Galatia. And this is what he says. He says, as for those who were held in high esteem, whatever they were, it makes no difference to me. God does not show favoritism. They added nothing to my message. It's almost like he's a little bit flippant here. He appears a little bit dismissive, if you will. And I'm not going to read any more into that, but let's just hold on to that for a second. Now, 6 years later, AD 55, he writes this in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 9 to the church in Corinth. He writes this. Watch how he gets a little more vulnerable. He says, I am the least of the apostles, and I do not even deserve to be called an apostle because I persecuted the church of God. Paul, before he was Paul, he was Saul. He was a leader in the Jewish nation, and he actually had Christians put to death. He gave the orders to put Christians to death for following Jesus. So then he comes to Jesus, and his whole world is turned upside down. He's like, hey, I don't even deserve to be called an apostle because I persecuted the church of God. And then he goes on, 5 years after that, AD 60, he's been following Jesus now for about 25 years. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 8, listen to what he says. Although I am less than the least of all God's people. Like, the longer he's walking with Jesus, when he describes his own sin, he describes his own rebellion, have you noticed he just keeps kicking it up a notch as he gets older? And then he's been following Jesus for 30 years. It's 2 years before his death. He writes this letter to Timothy, his son in the faith, 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 15. He's been walking with Jesus for 30 years now. He writes this, here's a trustworthy saying that deserves full acceptance. Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I'm the worst. I'm the worst. I just love the fact that the longer Paul's walking with Jesus, the more vulnerable he is. The more real he is. The more honest he is. Now, the opposite of vulnerability is defensiveness. So let's just park here for a minute. How many of you have someone in your life who, whenever you try to talk to them, ever try to get real with them, if you ever try to confront them on anything, which we'll talk more about next week, they just get defensive. Walls go up, attitude starts. That is the most difficult person to talk to. Listen to the definition of defensive. It means very anxious, to challenge or to avoid criticism. Love this last part. To protect. You know what defensiveness is? It's the opposite of being vulnerable. Defensive is, I'm going to protect my heart. Vulnerability says, I'm going to open my heart. Defensiveness says, I'm going to put up walls. I'm not going to let you in. You will have no great relationships around your life if you keep putting up walls, if you keep people out, if you're not willing to be real. Embracing our vulnerability is risky. But listen, it's not nearly as dangerous as giving up the opportunity to really be loved, to belong, and to find great joy. The risk of being vulnerable is not near as risky as keeping those walls up. When you keep those walls up, you keep yourself from being really loved. You keep yourself from belonging and being really connected with other people, and you keep yourself from the joy of getting that out of your heart and into the light. Here's what I know. When I'm fully known and fully loved, that's powerful. But when you're defensive and you have your walls up, you'll never get to be fully known. And you'll never really know if you're fully loved, because in your mind, no matter how much that person loves you, you're thinking to yourself, listen to me, you're thinking to yourself, man, if they really knew everything, if they knew some of the stuff that was way down deep inside, I don't know if they'd still love me. You'll never know the joy of being fully known and fully loved until you're willing to be fully known, to be vulnerable about what's going on in your life. If a relationship has no vulnerability, it is not a safe place to heal. Remember, you're not alone. No matter what you tell yourself, no matter what the enemy tells you, there are other people around you who are feeling and sensing the same thing. They're hurting as well. And you'll never know that until you open up and be honest. Otherwise, the enemy's just going to tell you, your own mind's going to tell you, I'm the only one that's jacked up. I'm the only one that doesn't have my ships together. I'm the only one that's got problems. No, it's not true. We all wrestle with stuff. Every single one of us. So, the great understanding of vulnerability is this. And I'm going to close with this. It's empathy. It's empathy. Not sympathy. Sympathy says, I'm sorry that you hurt. I'm sorry you're hurting. That's sympathy. I sympathize with you. I'm sorry you're hurting. Empathy is different. Empathy says, I hurt too. You are not alone. I'm in it with you. I feel it too. Me too. Listen to what the writer of Hebrews says about Jesus. This is so good. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14. It says this, since we have a great high priest who has entered heaven, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold firmly to what we believe. So he's talking about Jesus as our high priest. He says, listen, since we have this great high priest, Jesus Christ, since we have him, let's hold firmly to what we believe. Now watch what he says next. Verse 15. This high priest of ours understands our weaknesses. He understands our weaknesses. Now time out. How? How does he understand our weaknesses? Okay? Because he created us? Because he watches us struggle in this life? You know, because he kind of pays attention to what we're going through and goes, man, I see he's having a really hard time there. No. It's not because he watches us or just because he created us. This is so good. This is why Jesus matters most. He says this, for he faced all of the same testings that we do. Do you know why he understands our weaknesses? Because Jesus has faced every temptation, every test, every trial that we have. Jesus is our greatest form of empathy. Let me say that again. Jesus is our greatest form of empathy. He is. Rejection, Jesus would say, me too. I can empathize with you. I've been rejected. Pain, abuse, beatings. He was murdered. Pain, yeah, me too, Jesus would say. Abandonment, the very night that he's betrayed by Judas, All the disciples abandoned him that night in his greatest hour of need. Jesus faced people and disciples and people who were walking with him when he was doing miracles and feeding the 5,000. And then when you teach something that was a little bit more difficult for them to handle, they walked away. Jesus knew all about abandonment. Matter of fact, there's moments in the Gospels that describe how his own brothers mocked him and made fun of him. Jesus understood family rejection. He understood pain. He understood abandonment. Jesus looks at whatever it is that we are going through, and he can say to us, literally, me too. I've been there. I've walked it. I love you. We can do this together. So this week, that's what I'm going to ask you to do. Last week, our practical practice was start showing appreciation. Spend time with God, 15 minutes a day. What do you appreciate about the people around you? Thank God for the people around you. And then tell them. That was last week's. Here's this week's steps. We're going to spend 15 minutes a day getting real with God. Just being honest with him. Talk about the stuff that's rolling around inside your heart. Talk to him about your insecurities. Talk to him about your fears. Talk to him about your anxieties. Talk to him about the things that have broken you, that have hurt you. Just be real with him. And here's the thing. He already knows. He already knows that stuff that's rolling around inside of you. He just wants to know that you know. And he just wants you to be real with him. He wants you to trust him with that pain. He wants you to trust him with that secret. He wants you to trust him. Stop pushing him off. Stop pushing him away. Stop ignoring him and invite him into the midst of what you're walking through. In the midst of what you're being tempted to do even. Yeah, bring him into that. Talk to him about it. See, there's nothing more powerful than being fully known and fully loved, and we can have that in Jesus. We can lay our soul bare before him and tell him the deep things of our heart, and he will not give up on us, and he will not abandon us, and he will love us because no one has loved us like him. No one. Listen to what Hebrews 4:16 says. I'll end with this verse. It says, "So let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. There we will receive his mercy, and we will find grace," I love this, "to help us when we need it most." Maybe you're in a really difficult time right now. Difficult season, maybe anxiety, depression, you're overwhelmed, you're dealing with addiction. I don't know what you're walking through, but Jesus does. If you bring it to him, he'll help you most right now in this moment when you need him most, if you'll just be vulnerable with him. Just be real with him. And then the second thing I want you to do is I want you to find a trusted friend. Guys, maybe if you've never done this before, I want you to find someone in your life who you feel like you're the closest to and find out how close you really are. Lead the way. You want a real friendship? Lead the way by saying, "Hey, can I talk to you about some stuff that's been rolling around in my heart I'm dealing with?" And you're going to find out real fast who your real friends are because your soul needs you to be real. Your soul wants to come alive. Your soul wants to get free. And you need to have that friend in your life that you can talk to. I'm blessed with people in my life who come and they've been real with me. And one of the reasons they're real with me is because I've been real with them. I've opened up and talked about my weaknesses, my failures, my concerns, my fears. I have a family member who I'm so honored. Every once in a while, he'll just call me. And he called me a while back, and he just, tears, I could almost feel the tears rolling down his face. And he said, "I feel like such a failure as a husband. I feel like such a failure as a dad." And he just opened up and shared with me the stuff that was going on in his life. And for me, it's a holy moment. It's a holy conversation where another man is saying, "I got to be real about my life." And I treat that, I treasure that. I don't treat it flippantly. I had a leader, one of our leaders, come to me recently and just says, "Man, I feel like I've failed as a leader." He said to me, "I want to grow as a relational leader." He says, "I stink as a relational leader. I want to be a better relational leader." You know what I'm excited about? I have great hope for him. Because he's being vulnerable. He's taking risk. He's opening up. He's trusting our relationship. And now I trust him more than I ever did before. Because he was willing to be real with me about it. I have another friend of mine who's a pastor in another state. Every once in a while, this great friend of mine will call me and he'll just say, "I need to tell you something out loud." And he will just share something with me. He was even one time, this was years ago, he was in a meeting and he caught himself looking at this woman in this meeting and he said, "I looked at her too many times." And all the guys in the room know what I'm talking about, even some of the women, you know what I'm talking about. "I looked at her too many times. I know I was lusting." He says, "I just need to say it out loud. I lusted today and I'm wrong for doing that. And man, it's in my heart." And he called me a couple days later and he's like, "It felt so good to tell somebody that. It like broke the hold over my life. It set me free in that moment. Next meeting I was in with that person, I had no trouble with him being in the room because I brought that issue into light with somebody I could trust. Get real with somebody this week. Talk to them about the stuff that you're struggling with. Ask them to pray with you as well. And take it to God together. Every one of you who are listening, I'm so honored that you're a part of this today. I'm so honored you take this journey on getting our relationships together with us, because this matters greatly. The quality of your life depends on the quality of your relationships. So let's keep showing that appreciation. And this week, let's be real with each other. Let's be real with God and with somebody in your life that you can trust. Let's get that stuff out that's in there. Find out where our real relationships are at. I want to take this moment before I end to give you the opportunity to make the most important decision of your life. We never like to end one of our messages without giving you the opportunity to say yes to Jesus. And I know for some of you today, you need to bring your pain to Jesus. He cares about you. He loves you more than anyone else. He paid the price on the cross for you. He has the power to rise from the dead, and that power can set you free. That power can strengthen your life. And so today, maybe for the first time in your life, you need to say, Jesus, I'm done trying to lead my life. I need you to lead my life. Or maybe today's more of a rededication of your life to Him. He loves you. He's been waiting for you to bring your heart back home to Him. So if that's you and you're ready to make that decision today to give your life to Christ, would you pray with me right now? Just say this in your heart. Just say, Jesus, right now in this moment, I commit my life to you. I trust you with my life. Jesus, forgive me of my sin. Oh, you know what it is. I give it to you right now. Thank you for your forgiveness. Jesus, fill me with your presence. Fill me with your hope. Fill me with your love and your joy and your peace. Fill me, Lord, with your Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. Honor to be with you today. Have a strong week, everybody. Pure Heart family, I am with the Chris Moore, our global youth pastor. Big deal, global.
Okay.
Hey, let's highlight for a moment. Let's talk about the great things that happened at Valley Conference this year. Tell us about Valley
For sure.
Conference.
So this year we extended conference. We added Thursday night because we had such a huge reach with youth pastors in this last year that we really wanted to add an event for youth pastors. So in that Thursday night, we had over 100 youth pastors from all over our country coming here to Arizona to get inspired and equipped to change the world. And we had over 500 youth pastors just throughout the whole event. And then we had students from 20 different churches, and it was the largest thing we'd ever done.
Yeah.
And unity from across the valley, including our 5 biggest churches in the valley.
We want to do everything that we do with other churches and be united with other churches. And our youth team, our children's team, Next Gen has taken that passion to a whole new level. I'm so honored that you guys have taken that heartbeat and made it happen with Next Gen. Real quick, tell our family, how many youth pastors are we connecting with every single month? I mean, across the country and around the world.
So across the world right now, we're reaching north of 2,300 youth pastors from 40 different countries and resourcing them to reach kids. And God gave us a vision and mission to reach 1 million kids for Jesus this year. And honestly, I believe we're on track to see it happen.
That is
for God's
amazing,
glory,
amazing.
right?
So that was Thursday night.
Yes.
And then take it from there, Valley Conference.
So then we had students, like I said, from all across the state, including California, who showed up here with kids to experience conference. And we have stories of life change and salvations and baptisms. And it was the biggest by far that we'd ever done.
So this summer, talk a little bit about camps this summer. What's going on?
We're headed up to the mountains.
We're going north.
We're going
Which is
north.
exactly where you want to be in the summertime in Arizona, north of Phoenix.
Exactly. But this year we went a little bit different because we knew this season was going to be a huge challenge for families. And summer camp's one of those things that for some families is a luxury to be able to send their kids to. And we said, we want to be the cheapest camp in the state of Arizona. So what we did was we said, we're going to be the only camp in the state that's under $200 for our kids and for other churches. So not only are we creating the most affordable camp option that exists, but we're doing it and we've invited other churches to be a part of, because we know this season's so critical for the church and for students. And with the students battling through mental health, we knew camp has to be accessible, and kids can't pay $400 to $700. I know if you're here and you're just watching this, we created this camp and this experience so that students could go to camp. This was the vision and dream for us.
Yeah, deep discipleship, low cost.
Yes.
I love that.
Come
And
on.
high relationship.
Yes.
Lots of connections that students can have with leaders who love them and are
Yeah.
pouring into their lives, coming alongside parents to help parents raise their kids.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. Let's go.
Yes, go.
All right.
Yeah.
So, family, whenever you are giving, whether it's in the boxes on the way out the door at our auditorium, whether it's text to give, whether it's giving online, giving on our app, when you give, you're making a difference in the lives of students. These are the types of things your giving is going to. This is, like Chris just said, this is a season when so many teenagers are dealing with mental health issues. So Valley Conference, our camps this summer, are opportunities for our kids to have somebody safe to talk to process life. Family, thank you for your generosity. It is so worth it to make a difference in the next generation. Come on, baby. Let's go.